everybody, this is Lindsay with the North End Organic Nursery. Today we're going to talk a little bit about how to make a quick and easy ferment using daikon radish to make fermented daikon pickles. This is also going to be a very similar ferment that we're going to show next, which will be with kimchi. So right now we're going to start with a daikon radish. You can get daikon radish at almost any grocery store. It's just basically a long white Japanese style radish that once you chop it up and ferment it, makes delicious chips that you can snack on. So you can opt to clean or peel your daikon. I just cleaned it today. It still looks a little bit dingy, but I'm not worried about it. I'm not going to go ahead and peel it as well. So I'm going to cut off just the tip and just start chopping it up into discs. What we're doing today is actually considered to be a lactobacillus fermentation or a lactofermentation. So we're going to be using salt as a way to cultivate this particular bacteria to help ferment and turn these into pickles. This lactobacillus is very beneficial for your gut and your digestive system and helps take something like a radish that a lot of people may not like the flavor of naturally, or maybe you do, and turn it into something, a completely different flavor spectrum and with a lot more nutrition unlocked. So I'm going to take my discs, just put them into a bowl, make sure they're separated out, and I'm going to sweat them using some salt to kind of start pulling out the moisture. Now, in this type of fermentation method, we are going to be letting the vegetable itself create its own brine. In certain ferments, like when you're making cucumber pickles, you will create a brine externally using water and salt, add it to the pickles. But in this particular situation, since we have a lot of crunch to deal with that we can take out of these things and still have them be yummy and crunchy, we're going to actually pull the moisture out of the radish itself by using salt. So for about every 5 pounds of vegetables, you want to use about 2 to 3 tablespoons of salt. So I'm going to be eyeballing this one, but we've got about maybe a pound of daikon radish here. So I'm going to do about half a tablespoon to a tablespoon of salt. So now that we've salted our daikon radish, we're going to let them just sit and kind of sweat a little bit. As you can see from my hands that are already starting to release quite a bit of moisture. And we're going to let this sit for a couple hours to overnight to just sort of get some of the moisture coming out of them. You can cover them up with a dish and press them down to speed up the process, but for such a small amount like this, I'm just going to let them sit to the side and sweat on their own. After a couple of hours, the daikon radish has become liquidy. It has sweated out a lot of the liquid from the salt. And at this point, you could go ahead and just pack it into a jar, put the lid on, and start fermenting it. If you want to add some flavors, this is the time to do it. You can add curry flavors, you can add kimchi flavors, you can add whatever types of flavors you would like to lend to the daikon radish. It will take on a lot of those flavors and be delicious. You can also do this with turnips, by the way, or any other kind of pungent root vegetable. So for us today, I am going to add the kimchi flavor. So you have kimchi powder, which is the Korean pepper powder. Find this at any of your local Asian grocery stores. Just go in there and ask them for the kimchi powder. Don't use any other kind of pepper powder. It won't be the same, and you will probably overheat yourself. I'm just going to put a little bit in there, and I have some fresh ginger here that I'm going to just go in there. We're not going to eat the ginger, so I'm going to put it in there whole and just or lightly chopped up. And same thing with the garlic. We're just going to have a little bit of the garlic flavor, so I will chop this up and throw it in there. So once we have our ingredients back in with our daikon radish, I'm actually going to take a little bit of the juice from the last round of pickled daikon that I made that was also kimchi flavored. And this juice has got already some of those lactobacillus organisms in it, and it'll just help this to kind of get kick-started faster, plus lend some of the already fermented flavors to it. So I'm adding a little bit of that back in, and finish eating that later for sure. Now I'm going to take my daikon and my ingredients, mix it up, and shove it into the jar. Now that I have all the daikon radish and the ingredients in, I'm going to push it down into the jar, and we're going to add the little cup that comes with our Perfect Pickler fermentation kit. Now this is what we're using to do the ferment on here. The Perfect Pickler fermentation kit allows you to have the fermentation lid and the airlock valve so that no organisms can get into your ferment, but the gases can escape. Highly recommend using this instead of just using a plain mason jar. Have all of the daikon packed into here. We're adding the cup that comes with our Perfect Pickler kit, which we have here and available at the North End Organic Nursery. It gives us some instructions on fermentation, which is great, but allows us to take a plain old wide mouth mason jar and turn it into a fermentation station, which I really like to do with our quick ferments. For long-term ferments, I like to use the pickling crock that's behind me, but that'll be a different video. So I'm going to take my cup, a little stainless steel cup, and this is important for holding your ferment underwater or under liquid, because if anything is above liquid, then it's going to be exposed to air. Air means aerobic. Aerobic is not good for the fermentation process. Lactobacillus is an anaerobic or oxygen-hating organism, and you need to have everything underneath liquid so that it will be the dominant species. I'm going to put my Perfect Pickler lid on, and it has an airlock on it. This airlock will allow gases to come out but nothing to come in. Simply sit this on my counter for 3 to 10 days, just depending on how fermenty you like the flavor, and afterwards you get a delicious daikon pickle. Delicious on sandwiches, salads, and whatever you like. Thanks for joining us today. Come down and see us at the North End Organic Nursery, 3777 West Chinden Boulevard in Garden City. Thanks so much.